Hello, and welcome to the IslesNation Podcast. I'm Pete Truskowski, also known as NY Isles Nation. I'm joined today by, as always, Mike Rankiewski and Carey Haber. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good, Pete. How about yourself?
Doing well. We finally clinched the playoff spot. Okay.
Absolutely.
Carey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be back. I'm happy that we got the dramatic clinch that we were all hoping would happen last year. So, things are good.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. So, yeah, last night, the Islanders, and what was probably one of their most impressive wins of the year, came back from 2 goals down in the third period against the best team in the league to force overtime, and then Thomas Hickey won it in overtime to give the Islanders the 2 points they needed to clinch a playoff spot. Their magic number crept down to 0 against the Boston Bruins, who lost in a shootout last night, so the Islanders would have clinched either way. But it's always good to do it on your own terms. So yeah, the last 2 games, in my opinion, I know that Washington might not be full throttle right now, might not be at their best and giving their all and all that. And I know that Tampa's hurt, but those are two of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and in two different ways, the Islanders pulled off 2 impressive wins. So with those 2 wins, are you more? Do you believe in this team a little more than you did a couple of days ago?
Um, I guess I'll start. It's that they definitely had a nice response. Obviously, the big news earlier on Monday was Jack Capuano calling out specifically Brock Nelson, Josh Bailey, and Ryan Strome, essentially saying get their, his words, get their shit together. So the fact that they've had two good responses, and let's be honest, with a very ragtag bunch, especially last night in Washington on defense, it at least, it's nice to see that they had a good response and they seem maybe they finally turned the corner. Maybe that's what they needed all along was to, the coach to finally come out and essentially put people on the spot and call them out and saying, basically playing for their jobs. So feel a lot better than I did, especially after Saturday when Pittsburgh ran over us pretty good. So yeah, you had a nice win against Tampa Bay at home. You go follow up the next night in Washington against the best team in the league, and you fall down 2 goals in the third period with your fourth string goaltender, and you come back and win it in overtime. So that's great. And the biggest personnel item beyond that is you. It seems like they have a first line now that is pretty dangerous with Tavares, Oposo, and Nielsen. Tavares has 6 points in his last 2 games. Oposo's had a number of points, same as Nielsen. So they finally seem like they've found the combination up front. It took them 80 games, but this is better late than never, I guess. So I think you have to feel better. Not all of a sudden going to start printing out the Stanley Cup final tickets or playing the parade route, but definitely feel a lot better today and yesterday over as opposed to Saturday when it was really just a very ugly showing.
Well, the last 2 games were definitely encouraging. I mean, I think to your point, they played two really different games against two really good teams, and there's nothing not to be encouraged, but I don't know how much I really believe in them from like the whole. If you take a look at the whole season, because this has kind of been their entire season, where they've looked really good in some stretches, and then in other stretches they just look downright awful. Of course, it's good that they're likely going to be going into the playoffs playing at a pretty high level, but in terms of how far they can go, I think a lot of it is going to depend on things like the matchup. And I know we'll get to that a little bit later, but I still don't think that the Islanders, and I know you alluded to this, Mike, but I don't think the Islanders are, legitimate contenders. I think they are probably a middle tier contender to come out of the East, but the difference between them and the teams that are above them in some cases are pretty pronounced. So, I'm kind of where I was the last time we spoke, which was they just need a lot of breaks. They need good luck with the matchups. They need good goaltending. They need timely scoring, and maybe, but in general, not much has changed for me except for the fact that, they're clearly moving past that dreadful stretch that they had in March. I mean, that was just downright awful. They're past that now. They're back to being what they were for the majority of the season. And while in my opinion it's not ideal, it's not where I would like them to be, I wouldn't discount the fact that they could have a little bit of success here going forward. So that's kind of where I am here. I hope things aren't as dire as they were, I would say, as they were maybe 2 weeks ago.
It's maddening because if you think back to our last two playoff appearances and you see how this team's playing down the stretch, it's the same problem over and over. Some nights they look amazing and they look like world beaters, and then other nights they don't show up. I mean, look at our playoff series against the Penguins. Everyone said we would have won that series if we got good goaltending. But we got beat 5-6-0 in two of the games in Pittsburgh. And last year in Game 5 we didn't show up. Game 7 we didn't show up. Game 2 we blew a 3-1 lead. I mean, this team, when they're on their game, they're one of the better teams in the league, but for some reason they just can't consistently play that style and play that game. I mean, it's obviously hard to expect that from a team where they're full throttle the whole time. But I mean, just when they play like when they play like they did in the third period yesterday, or how they did against Tampa on Monday, you honestly believe in them. But you know that this team's not going to play that way throughout a whole series, or even throughout a whole game for the most part. So that's what's maddening to me. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
No, I think it's a fair point. The one thing you can say about them is they've been consistently inconsistent the entire season and in the last several seasons. So I think it's a fair point. It's frustrating because you see efforts like last night and Tuesday night against Tampa Bay, and you think, okay, this team can maybe cause a little damage and make some noise in the playoffs, and then you look at a game like Saturday against Pittsburgh and you think, well, they should probably be battling for a top 5 draft pick at that point. So I guess the one good thing you could say is I think, we see it obviously we see it up close with the Islanders. We watch them daily. I doubt most of us have the means and the time to watch, the 29 other teams on a daily basis. And my guess is that probably about 25 of them are in similar situations with us, where some nights they look like world beaters, and other nights they look like they don't belong in the NHL. So I don't think we're any different in that regard. It's just frustrating because obviously we see it up close and personal on a nightly basis with this team.
They also set really high. They set a really high bar after last season, where they were phenomenal for the first 60 games of the year, and I mean, if you take a look at this year, there's pretty stark differences there. To Pete's point about the playoff series themselves, I agree, but if you take a look back at both series, the Pittsburgh series, they obviously were not as good as they are now. And they were extremely inexperienced. And, I'm willing to kind of bypass that a little bit. The Washington series last year, I don't I mean, outside of losing 3 defensemen, I have no real explanation for that. But, hey, this is going to be their 3rd time in the playoffs in 4 seasons. At this point, that's a pretty good string of playoff appearances. Obviously, it's not perfect, but I saw online today, I think only 5 or 6 NHL teams have made the playoffs the last 4 seasons. So they're right there. Those excuses are gone now, and they can't have these letdowns in the playoffs, especially because, and you can kind of phrase this or position it any way you want, but if they're playing Pittsburgh, then it's going to be a highly emotional series, division series. The teams, as we know, don't like each other. There's no excuse to have letdowns there, and I know this past weekend there was one. I get that. Or on the flip side, if they play Florida, you're facing an inexperienced, for the most part, team outside of a couple players, and they're kind of in a little bit of a way where the Islanders were a couple years ago, where they're a pretty young team. They have a couple of highly productive veterans, and same thing. There's not really an excuse for a letdown. The Islanders are not green to the playoffs at this point. They've been there before. This isn't a very young team at this point, and this is like we spoke about. This season is going to be defined by their success in April and May, and that hasn't changed. That's basically what it comes down to at this point. I'm pretty sure we are all willing to forgive the unevenness of this season if they make a deep playoff run.
I want to add to Carey's point here, and this is going to be scary, but this is the first time since 2003, 2004 that the Islanders have made the playoffs in back-to-back years. I'm 21 years old and a second semester college senior, and I was in third grade when that happened. It's been a long time since we've been this good, and we're still complaining about this team.
It's definitely a nice change of pace besides arguing who we should pick in the top 10 of the draft. So yeah, expectations, especially after last season, have been raised, which is a good thing. You want a team to have high expectations. Not enough. It's not just good enough to get into the playoffs when more than half the teams in the league do. Now it's time. I think we would all agree it's time to make some noise, make some good progress in the playoffs, win at least a round, and see what happens from there. And I think that maybe kind of, will they win a round? That's good. As Pete alluded to at the top of the program, it's really going to depend on the matchups. And I know there's been a lot of discussion over the last 24 hours amongst Islander fans on Twitter and on various message boards, and even in the mainstream media. There's been articles written. Is it better to lose against the Rangers Thursday night in Madison Square Garden and try to, I don't know if solidify is the right word, but try to get more entrenched in that first wild card spot, so you're playing the Panthers as opposed to the Penguins, who right now are probably the best team in the conference. So what are your thoughts? How if you're the coach and you're the player, or it's probably two different answers, but if you're the coach, how do you approach these next 3 games for the Islanders?
If you're banged up, you don't play. And you can't sacrifice. If you're the coach, you can't sacrifice. You can't send that message that, it's okay to lose. So, he's not going to bench Grice tomorrow. He's not going to bench Tavares tomorrow. But if there are guys that aren't, feeling great, in my opinion, they should sit. In terms of if it's better to lose tomorrow, hell yeah, it is. I mean, look, we're all desperate to see this team have some playoff success, and it's not even just about the Pittsburgh thing. This accomplishes so many different things. One, like you said, Mike, Pittsburgh, for my money, is the number 1 contender of the Eastern Conference at this point, followed closely by number 2 Washington. So getting out of that bracket means that you're basically avoiding the top 2 contenders in the conference until the Eastern Conference Finals. That's huge. And again, you're facing a very inexperienced team in Florida, and if you could get by them, which is no guarantee, they have a great goaltender, etc. But if you can get by them, you're facing a depleted Tampa team or a Detroit or Boston team that, frankly, is not very good. So the path to the Eastern Conference Finals is much, much clearer than it would be in the Metro. And if you want to even take it a step further, what you are doing is you're putting your biggest rival in that bracket, where they would have to face the 2 best teams in the conference to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. So for my money, it's hard to say that you would be openly rooting against the Islanders tomorrow, but you know what? You kind of alluded to this a couple of weeks ago, Mike, where it's similar to the dilemma years ago where, we'd be at the end of the season and, we'd be third to last in the league, and it was like, should we win or should we lose? And frankly, tomorrow's game means not a damn thing next week. It doesn't mean anything at all. So if you're asking me what has a higher potential to benefit the Islanders long term, winning or losing tomorrow, I'm just going to be honest. It's to lose tomorrow, and I'll defend that. I'll stand by that no matter what happens going forward.
No, I definitely would agree with that. But at the same time, Thomas Hickey was on Hahn and Humpty today with Rick DiPietro, and both of them, if you listen to their show, they're a little risque, and they were pretty much trying to get Thomas to admit that you guys want to lose tomorrow. You guys want the Panthers, you don't want the Penguins. And Hickey's obviously not going to admit that he wants to lose the games. But he said that tomorrow's a huge game, that it could send a message that they're for real, sweeping the Rangers, all that stuff. So, I mean, I don't think this team's going to roll over and not try and win. And I think they might. I mean, obviously, Islander fans do not want to lose to the Rangers. And I doubt Ranger fans want to lose to the Islanders. But at the same time, if you think about it, if the Islanders lose out and they play the Panthers in round one, and then we look over to the other bracket and we see Marc-Andre Fleury imploding like he does every other playoffs for the Rangers and giving up goals from behind the goal line, I mean, you're gonna punch yourself in the face. I mean, you can't predict what happens in the playoffs. That's why it's the greatest thing in sports, right? The greatest thing in professional sports. So I
Right.
mean,
But then you still have the Capitals looming, whereas in the Atlantic it's Tampa or Detroit or Boston, and neither of those three teams are as scary as Washington. So it's not just about the first round. I totally hear what you're saying.
at the same time, the Florida Panthers aren't getting enough respect here. We're acting like they're a pushover.
No, they're very good. They're very, very good, but they're simply not as good as Pittsburgh.
I mean, at the same time, I don't know about that because, first of all, Marc-Andre Fleury has a concussion right now, and if they go into the playoffs with Matt Murray, who is a hell of a prospect, but he's a rookie, then, that's a question mark right there. And Marc-Andre Fleury himself is a question mark in the playoffs, and we've proven that we can beat the Penguins. Even this year, we beat them in a close-fought game when they were at their peak. I mean, everyone says they've been better since they fired their coach, and yes, they kicked their ass twice this season, but at the same time, we've beaten them. Over the past few years, we've beaten them plenty of times here and there. Their playoff series, like I said earlier, if we had good goaltending, there's a good chance we win that series. So, I mean, they don't have their goalie's a question mark right now either way. And the Islanders, I mean, the thing here that's important to me is I don't know if this is I feel like the Islanders might not even wake up for a playoff series against the Panthers, knowing the way this team plays. I feel like they might need to verse the Rangers or the Penguins to get up and play. I mean, I've seen them sleepwalk through games with the Panthers about 10 times over the last 3 years, so that's a real concern of mine. And I mean, I do think that playing the Panthers is our best chance to advance, but I'm not going to sit here and openly root for the Islanders to lose because there's no guarantees either way.
Yeah, but I think, I agree with Carey's first statement. If I'm Jack Capuano, yeah, anyone who's banged up, you obviously don't risk it tomorrow. You let them, give them a couple of days to rest, whether it's Dahan, Clutterbuck, Zidlicki, anyone who's even a little bit nicked up, you allow them the extra time to rest up. And it's funny, as we say this, Detroit just beat Philly, so now we're 6 points ahead of Philly still with both teams have 3 games remaining, and we have 3 more regulation wins. So basically our magic number to avoid the Capitals in the first round is 1 point. And I think we all agree we should we should get that, or Philly might lose 1 point, but that's a little bit of a sidebar. But getting back to tomorrow night or Thursday night against the Rangers, if I'm the coach, if I'm Capuano, I absolutely rest guys who need the rest. But the players that are out there, their instinct is to play hard. They're going to play hard, and that goes for both sides. The Rangers players who are on the ice are going to play hard, and I'm sure Alain Vigneault will take a similar approach of anyone who's a little bit nicked up, they'll sit in the press box, and maybe there may be some discussion before the game by the coaches to say to their team, we don't have to kill each other out there, essentially. Obviously, play your game, but don't put yourself in a position to get hurt. And I think that's really the main thing is both teams want to get out of that game healthy. You're not going to obviously sit there and tell your team to lose the game. That's just against their instinct, and you don't want anyone to start developing bad habits either. So you want them to keep rolling. I feel like especially a team like the Islanders is very reliant on confidence. So you don't want to do anything to really get shatter that right now, especially when the top line is starting to play really well. I think the last couple of nights, Ryan Strome and Brock Nelson have looked very good. And so, if you can kind of, Anders Lee continues to look good. So if you keep those guys rolling forward, I think that's a good thing as well. So, yeah, I put it this way. I'll be very happy if the Islanders win. I'm never not going to be happy when they win. But if they lose, I'm not going to get too torn up about it because obviously the silver lining is you probably end up with a better matchup a week from now.
It's such a weird dynamic, and I said this on Twitter yesterday, which is it's just so strange. Like this game should be so important, and I guess it kind of is, but in the reverse way than what it would normally be expected of it. And like I've said a lot to you guys and on Twitter about the playoff system and how I don't really like it all that much. If this was the old playoff system, the Islanders Rangers would be the 4-5 matchup, and right now, and tomorrow night would be just a gigantic game for home ice. And what we have instead is a game where I know Ranger fans that are rooting for the Islanders, and I know Islander fans that are rooting for the Rangers, and that's just it. To me, the whole thing is just so bizarre. Like how I know that you can't plan for something like this, and I get that, but the way that it's turned out is just something that I legitimately think that tomorrow's game is. I agree. Like the players they care. They want to win. I don't think there's a doubt about that. They're not gonna tank the game on purpose. But I just think it's a very, very strange dynamic right now, and I know that there's going to be a lot of people at Madison Square Garden tonight that I don't think it's going to be as quote passionate as we typically see from a game, especially a game this late in the season that would normally have such high importance. I just think the whole thing is very weird.
No, but at the same time, you're always going to have that problem where teams are going to want to lose to have better matchups. I mean, in the past, you'd have the 3 seed, the division winners, usually from the Southeast. And that was back when it was like the Hurricanes and the Thrashers. And every year, it felt like you'd want to be the 6 seed to verse them rather than the 4-5 matchup. And I mean, at the same time, even this year, if you look at it, the Rangers are the 4 seed and the Panthers are the 3 seed. So what we're arguing right now is basically the same thing. Do you want the Rangers with Henrik Lundqvist in net and a team that's been to the conference finals 3 times in the last 4 years and finish 5th, or would you rather finish 6th and take on the inexperienced Florida Panthers? I mean, you're always going to have that problem with matchups. I mean, sometimes, no matter how good a team is in the regular season, you just think they're a better matchup for you. So, I mean, I'm not a fan of the system. I know what they're trying to do and promote rivalries and the like, but at the same time, I'm not sure how exactly you fix it.
I would get the problem with the scenarios that you pointed out was that they used to give the division winners the top 3 seeds no matter what. Like that was another thing that was always ridiculous to me. Just go with the best 8 records. If you have the best record, you're first. If you have the 8th best, you're 8th. And the only thing that you get guaranteed by winning a division is that you literally make the playoffs. You shouldn't have like a higher seed if you're not as good of a team. And I think that would mitigate a whole lot of teams or games like tomorrow night where basically teams are aware, fans are aware of the situation and are kind of like, I don't know. To me, like there's a lot more ambivalence for tomorrow's game than there should be. Tomorrow's game under the old system would be just have ridiculous buzz. It's for home ice advantage. These 2 teams are likely going to be facing in the playoffs next week. And instead what we're getting is the 2 seed in the conference is likely going to face the 4 seed, and the 3 seed is likely going to face the 5th seed. And I don't know. I just find this whole dynamic to be extremely bizarre, and I don't think the seeding makes any sense. If you're gonna have a playoff system like this where the divisions are paramount, then in my opinion, the divisions basically need to be treated as conferences in themselves, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 in each division, no wild card team. And if you get stuck in a really good division, well, that just sucks. Like, I think this just defeats the whole purpose of seeding, because if you have a playoff conference that's 1-8, 6-7, 2-4, and 3-5, like what the hell is the point of having seeds to begin with? To me, it's silly.
Yeah, no, I mean that's another discussion. I agree this is probably not the best system, but this is what the system is that we're dealing with. And obviously the immediate concern is what to do with the next couple of days. I mean, there's also the scenario where they could actually win tomorrow, the Islanders, and then they could still lose their final 2 games, and that'd be it. I mean, if they win tomorrow in regulation, they would be tied with the Rangers with 99 points. The Islanders would still have one extra game in hand, but the Rangers would still have the tiebreaker in terms of regulation victories. So there's no guarantee even a win tomorrow would, you know, lock up the third seed in the Metro. It obviously puts you in a much better position to do so, but it's very conceivable they could win. They could win tomorrow and lose Saturday against Buffalo and lose Sunday against Philly in a game which it could be the difference between Philly making the playoffs or not. And if that's the case, you have to figure they will come out flying, and the Islanders would at that point would really nothing to play for. Would probably just play it safe and play a lot of their backups, and again just try to get out of the game without getting too banged up. So it's a good problem to have in a sense, because again normally the Islanders are not in a position where they can they're playing for seeding so late in the year. So it's definitely a unique situation. I completely understand the fans who want to win at all costs because it's the Rangers, and hey, you want your team to win. Why wouldn't you? I mean, that's, I think, a completely reasonable rationale. But I also understand Carey's position, and I think it's a very rational thought is let's lose, or let's we won't be too upset if we lose because we'll just end up in a better playoff position, a better bracket. Again, doesn't guarantee you're going to beat Florida if in that position, but on paper anyway, Pittsburgh is better than Florida right now, and that's really what the decision comes down to.
I mean, the last 2 years we made the playoffs, we finished the regular season on a losing note, and both times it feels like it affected our chances of advancing. In 2013, we lost our last three, and we fell from the 6th seed, I believe it was, to the 8th seed, and ended up playing the Penguins instead of a team like Montreal, who lost in 5 to Ottawa, I believe, that year. And last year, obviously, it cost us home ice. So, I mean, I understand what you guys are saying, but at the same time, I feel like there definitely could be some negative effects to losing out here.
Oh, absolutely. You don't want to get into bad habits. As I mentioned before, a lot of the younger players, I think, are very reliant on having confidence. I think Brock Nelson and Ryan Strome, since the last 2 games after getting called out, have played a lot better. They look like they're flying all over the ice. And again, they're not perfect, but even Strome's been throwing the body around a little bit. They seem to be creating some more. So I don't want to lose that. I think let them gain the confidence. So hopefully they can carry it into the playoffs, no matter who you play. The top line has played the last 2 games very well. Tavares looks like he's starting to kind of find his groove, and as we've seen for the last 7 seasons, he's one of those guys, once he gets 1 or 2 games under his belt, he could score points in bunches. It would not surprise anyone if over the next 3 games he puts up another 7, 8, 9 points, because that's just the type of player he is. So I think there's a lot of benefits, a lot of good could happen from them playing well these last 3 games and seeing what happens from there. And again, I expect the players on the ice to play hard. Where I think they might be at a disadvantage is, and the coaching staff, anyone who is nicked up, I think should be rested. There's no point to play Cal Clutterbuck if his knee's still bothering him. There's no point to rush Calvin DeHaan back. Let Mayfield play. Obviously, let Pulock play. Zidlicki, whoever else, Bernier, Eric Bolton. Let those guys play. And give them the opportunity. It's also a reward for those guys who have been on the roster for a good portion of the year, especially Bolton and Bernier. Let them get some game activity. Let them feel like more part of the team than they currently probably do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I understand your guys' point about confidence. I think there's legitimacy to it. I mean, I think we saw it, especially over the last couple of weeks. I mean, the Islanders had like zero confidence, and it showed. And now they're starting to get their game back, and to your guys' point, it's showing again. I definitely don't think that losing out would be the best option for them, but locking themselves into the 7th seed, the first wild card, is in my opinion, the best option for them. So again, if that does mean a loss tomorrow, and I'm not saying they should lose the 2 games after that. I'm just talking about tomorrow. Then that is a sacrifice that I'm personally am more than fine giving, so to speak, because end of the day, this game tomorrow does not matter next week at all. And so down the stretch, from like 2009 to 2012, I sat there and I rooted for wins because I was like, it's good for these players to have confidence and get wins and show they can. And I know it's not the same thing, but what I am trying to say is, like, to me, that was a very short-sighted view of looking at things. Looking back on it, we don't know, who they would have drafted if they finished, in certain spots. But it's safe to say, I think, had they lost some of those games, they probably could, have an all-star or two that they don't have now. And I don't want to be – I think I've learned, like, a personal lesson from that sometimes the long-term view is better. And in my opinion, looking past tomorrow's game, looking at next week, that's what it is. I mean, hey, look, if they win tomorrow and they get Pittsburgh, so be it. Obviously, it is what it is at that point. But if we're just talking preferences, then to me, this is a no-brainer. It should be Florida, and I'll take. And Florida. In terms of Florida, they're a really, really good team. But I see their skaters as almost pretty similar to the Islanders, where they have a clear edge in net. But no matter who the Islanders play, the opponent is going to have a clear edge in net unless Fleury is hurt and is out for the first round. Then to Pete's point before, maybe Matt Murray is very, very good, but he's very green as well. So maybe that's the one series where that advantage is mitigated without Jaromir Halak in there. So I see your guys' point, but comparing the two teams, I would definitely prefer Florida.
And one thing I have to bring up here, and it irks me, and I don't usually get irked by people's comments towards me on Twitter anymore, but I posted a couple of polls earlier today asking basically what we're talking about now, and some jackwagon tells me, sounds like you're rooting for the Islanders to lose tomorrow. You must not be a real fan. Really, bud. Like I said earlier, I'm 21 years old, and the Islanders have never won a playoff series in my life, so God forbid I root for something that might make that a reality for the first time in 22 years. Go buzz off. I just have to get that off my chest.
But that's my point. Like, I sat there and rooted for Wind in 2010 against, Columbus at the end of March, and I'm sitting there like, this is a really great thing, at that point. And looking back on it, it's like it was silly. And that's kind of how this ties into tomorrow, where I just feel like, I know it's the Rangers, but, like, let's be real, guys. If they were playing anyone else other than the New York Rangers tomorrow, would this even be like a question? We would all be rooting for the loss tomorrow. I think that
again, and I think sometimes we as fans maybe put ourselves a little bit too high as far as outcomes of games. Us rooting tomorrow for the Rangers, the Islanders, or for the arena to collapse, it doesn't matter. Obviously, what matters is out there. So if people, again, I and this goes really to Pete's comment about people on Twitter saying, well, how could you root for them? You're not a real fan. I'm at the point of my life, and I say this as someone a little bit older than you guys. Root for whoever the hell you want, whatever there's no such thing as you're a better fan, you're a worse fan. Again, as I said before, you want to root for the Islanders to win because it makes you happy. Go for it, awesome. I'm all for that. Completely understand the rationale. You want them to lose because obviously you think it helps them in a playoff seed and that they have a better shot to advance. Completely agree. Don't think it's a bad position to have. Root for them to lose. I get it. It doesn't make you a bad fan. At the end of the day, we all want to see the same thing with this team. We want them to win in the playoffs. And, so to that other stuff of, you're a bad fan, you're a good fan. Everyone has their reasons for rooting for a team or rooting against a team. Do what you want. Do what you want. You want the Islanders to win. You want to see them win. Go ahead. That's awesome. I agree with you there. You want the Islanders to play in an easier playoff bracket. I agree with you there. That's why, to me, win or lose tomorrow, I'm not going to be crying. I'll be happy, I guess, either way. Whether they win, great. If they don't, hey, they probably got a better playoff bracket. So, to me, tomorrow's a win-win in that regard.
You know what the big problem is? honestly, we may not even have a playoff series because Barclays Center decided to book like 8 events in the middle of the first round. Did you guys see that tweet from Arthur Stapleford? They have 3 nights out of 4 booked from like Saturday to Wednesday. What the hell are they thinking?
That's what I'm wondering here. I don't know if it's their first year of having hockey there. Maybe they didn't expect us to make the playoffs.
No, but they had
Maybe
they had basketball. The Nets have been in the playoffs the last 3 years. There's no way they didn't know to expect something like this.
yeah, but I mean, at the same time, if you look at the Florida Panthers arena, and they're not available April 13th, which is the Wednesday the playoffs start. But after that, they have one event booked until June 24th. If you look at the Madison Square Garden calendar of events, this is the most famous arena in the world, somewhere every performer dreams to play. After April 18th, they have 2 events until June 13th that aren't New York Liberty games. I mean, I don't know what Barclays is thinking here. Like, boxing hasn't been relevant since Mike Tyson. Give me a break.
You know what I think it is? I really like. We've
They were
seen
just,
the
they're
reports
desperate.
about how.
They were desperate for dates, and
Yes,
they took a guaranteed date.
Yep.
That's what it is. I mean,
Yep.
there was no. I mean, that goes to the whole Parkolays thing. Is they built an arena with that's not for hockey. They're very short-sighted. I think that this just again proves it that they, whoever runs the scheduling or whoever runs the booking over at Barclays, it was, yeah, maybe the Islanders or the Nets may make the playoffs, but we're guaranteed 2 nights or 3 nights of events here, so we'll book it and we'll worry about it later, and hopefully it won't be an issue, but most likely it will definitely cause some scheduling conflicts, or at least some scheduling oddities. There's going to be a lot of days in between games, or there's going to be a lot of back-to-backs. So I guess the only good thing is it's going to affect both teams the same, you would think. So it's just weird. It's definitely weird. It's definitely going to be a very long. Whatever happens in the first round, it seems like it's going to be a very long, drawn-out process because of just the scheduling of it.
It just sucks. It just sucks because, like, the one advantage that we had all season was a top tier 1A, 1B goaltending situation, and without Yaro Halak, if we're in a situation where we have 4 out of 7 games being back-to-back situations, like, now you're taking what became a disadvantage and basically, shooting it right into the sun. Like Thomas Greiss, they've done a good job of not having him play back-to-backs, and there's no way that they're going to play whoever is healthy enough to be his backup in those games. So I think it becomes a way more pronounced disadvantage, and I just think that's very unfortunate. And I agree with you, Mike, to your point. Like, we've all seen the reports about how Barclays doesn't hit any of their revenue goals and stuff like that, so they definitely just wanted the guaranteed dates here. And the problem doesn't continue because Pete pointed out too, there's Springsteen there, and then I think he said Bieber was playing there after that. Like, they have plenty of dates here going forward. So this is going to be, even if they get past the first round, this is an ongoing problem now.
Yep, if they make the second round of the playoffs, they have 4 dates booked in 8 days. 2 for Springsteen and 2 for Bieber. Then they got a day off, and then they have a Mother's Day concert. So,
listen, I will say, in their defense on with Springsteen and Bieber, I think they probably did the right thing booking those 2 acts over hockey for that.
I agree. I definitely
your commitment to the Islanders though to not make their playoff scheduling a total shit show.
Yeah, but
as one of their co-tenants.
But these schedules, again, some of these concerts, especially those bigger acts, those tours are announced well in advance. And God, I can't believe we're going to talk about Justin Bieber on a podcast, but if Justin Bieber manager comes to you and says, we want to play in the New York area in this week, do you have any dates at Barclays? Barclays will move anything to get those concerts there because they know they're going to sell out and they know they can jack up prices to God knows what they're going to pay. So in their defense, when it comes to the second round, if the Islanders are there, I can't really blame them for booking Springsteen and Justin Bieber. It definitely makes it more inconvenient for the Islanders, but if I'm the arena, if I'm the owners, and I'm in charge of getting as much revenue as possible, you're damn right. I'll book Bieber and Bruce Springsteen twice that week.
Yeah, I think to me it's just like a snowball thing more than it is like I don't blame them obviously for booking. Actually, I'm going to one of the Springsteen concerts, so I really don't blame them.
You're going to the Bieber. You're going to the Bieber concert. Don't lie.
Baby.
But yeah, I mean, and the other thing too, especially I don't know about Bieber's tour, but I do know that Springsteen played MSG, and we know that they have this inferiority complex against MSG, as they probably should. So, yeah, I mean, I don't blame them for booking those dates. I just think, because of the boxing and because the Islanders and whoever they play are going to be in this, what is likely to be a very awkwardly scheduled first round, now they're going to potentially be in an awkwardly scheduled second round too. And I don't know, the effects of that again, especially with the goaltending, if they only have one, proven NHL goaltender on the roster that is healthy enough to play, and he's playing all these back-to-backs, that's a major concern for A, burnout, B, injury, and, I just see general performance. So I just think that, there's like conspiracy theories that they were out and they just don't care about the Islanders and they're like so deprioritized. I don't think that's the problem. I think it's a pure revenue situation where they're just not hitting their goals and they have to, but it is potentially or unintentionally screwing the Islanders, especially if they don't have two healthy goalies on the roster.
All right, so enough talk about Carey's favorite Justin Bieber and Bruce Springsteen. Obviously Carey mentioned the goaltending with the condensed schedule could be an issue. So what are you guys' feelings on I was gonna say Halak, on Thomas Greiss, since he's going to be the number one clearly through the playoffs? Doesn't sound like Halak's due back anytime soon. So what's your confidence level with Greiss? Are you comfortable, or are you basically praying that we don't get something like we got with Nabokov a few years ago against the Penguins in the playoffs?
Now, I was obviously one of the leaders of Team Greiss here. And at the same time, I don't want to say that Greiss has been horrible, but, I mean, as we're coming to notice right now, Thomas Greiss is a backup goalie. And he'll probably never be an NHL starter, and that's being exposed as he plays more games. He's played some good games. I mean, overall, I thought his game against the Lightning was pretty good on Monday night, but that second goal, that should not be let in by an NHL goalie. And, I mean, he's played some decent games over the course of the last few days. I can't remember who we played last. The game before Pittsburgh.
The Columbus game, he was absolutely brutal. The game we won 4-3.
Oh, yeah, he was brutal that game, but he played another game last week.
Carolina.
Oh, Carolina it might have been. I thought he was pretty good that game. I think we won 2-1, 3-1, 3-2 maybe?
Yeah, I forgot the exact score, but to your point about he's a backup, that's exactly what a backup is. He'll allow some goals, some really head-scratching goals, and then he every now and then comes up with a big save. And that's what happened against Columbus over the weekend, it was last Thursday. They're up 3-1. He lets in that power play goal to Brandon Saad, which was just, I mean, it was comical. I mean, it was literally a flip shot from the blue line, which I don't understand how he actually got the majority of the puck, but it like sat down behind him. It was just really incredible to watch. It was almost as if it was a joke. And then he allowed the goal early in the third period to tie it up, almost like from a bad angle. He kind of put it up high on him before, but then later in the period, he came up with a couple really big saves to preserve them getting into overtime and shootout. So he's definitely had some moments over the last couple weeks where you say, well, that's why he's a backup, and you just hope that he can eliminate those really bad goals, because you're right, even against Tampa Bay the other day, he played a pretty solid game, but he lets up just one horrible goal, and obviously the playoffs, that could be the difference between moving on or staying home.
Yeah, so Grice's last 4 games ago, he gave up 6 to the Tampa Bay Lightning. If you score 4 goals against Ben Bishop, who's been one of the best goalies in the league this year, you absolutely have to win that game and not fail to cover the 1.5 spread. So that's one bad performance.
Spoken like someone who took the Islanders that game.
No comment. But And then you have him playing the Hurricanes at the Barclays Center. I almost said the Coliseum. What was me? And he stopped 26 out of 27. The Islanders won 2-1 in a shootout. But the goal he gave up that game was very soft as well. It was late in the second period, and Derek Ryan took a flubber of a wrist shot that beat him short side.
Yes, that's right. You're right.
So, I mean, overall his numbers were good, but, I mean, that goal needs to be stopped, and he probably should have had a shutout. So, and then the game after that was a Columbus game where there was literally a video posted, and the caption was, "What it looks like when you eat Chipotle before a game," with that sad goal. That sad goal, where it looks like he was crouching down like a dog taking a shit. And then that was a terrible game. And then he played against the Lightning on Monday, and he gave up 2 goals. I think he made about 28 saves. So, I mean, on paper, it's a good performance. But once again, that second goal late in the second period, it could have been a backbreaker, and it could have broke the Islanders. Thankfully, they came back and won the game and didn't let it affect them. But, I mean, even the games where his numbers look good, he himself has given up some weak goals. And I think that's what a backup goalie does. I mean, at this point, we just got to hope Grice doesn't lose games for us.
Yeah. I mean, if you date back, and I didn't see the games obviously where I was away, but if you date back to when Halak got hurt, he basically has let up one backup quality goal, so to speak, per game, and that's not going to cut it against a team like Pittsburgh. I mean, they have too much offensive power. Where if you're giving up a bad goal per game in the playoffs, like, you're probably not going to win that series. We saw the numbers last year with Halak and Holtby. Both of them had over like 930 save percentages, and that's what it required for one team to win that series. That might not necessarily be the case if they play Pittsburgh, because, as we saw, there historically when those two teams play in the playoffs, there's offense, but we can't expect Fleury and Nabokov to have sub 900 save percentages there either. So, I just think that with Grice, I think Pete is exactly right. He just has to not be giving up those weak goals and potentially losing these 1-goal games in the playoffs if he is, especially because even the last 2 games notwithstanding, as I alluded to at the top of the podcast, I don't have that much trust in the Islanders against some of these teams, especially Pittsburgh, to be controlling play and generating shots. And they've struggled even with Florida to do that. Outside of one period, the game that they won, and one game where Halak was terrible, they don't play Florida that well either. So, like, they really, really need Grice to put up a strong showing in the playoffs. And if they don't, then we could forget about talking about Bruce Springsteen or Justin Bieber in the second round, because it's not going to happen.
At the same time, I feel like the Berube ship has sailed. I mean, there was a lot of talk about the Islanders potentially trading Halak in the summer because the team liked what they saw at Berube, and Berube stealing starts from Grice down the stretch and potentially starting game 1. His last 2 performances have not been good.
Yeah, that was a fun 36 hours.
Oh my God, I totally lost it when that came. That's just such a bad idea. I can understand trading Grice if they really believe in Berube and going with a Halak-Berube tandem next year. If you want to do that, that at least makes sense, because then you have a proven starter to provide stability if Berube isn't actually that great. But to go with a Grice-Berube tandem, especially after what we've seen for the last month, is just so beyond the scope of what a winning team, frankly, to put it bluntly, does. I mean, you just can't do that. You need to have a proven starter on this roster. And while Yaro Halak is not a top-tier starting goaltender, he's probably average to slightly above average. I mean, it's certainly worlds better than having a backup and a prospect that you're hoping works out. Like, it's just indescribable how much of a bad decision that is. That's not an area where you skimp out on the cap. That's an area that you make sure that you're stable no matter what, because it can lose you seasons, as we've seen, especially in like 2013-14.
I know this is off topic, but you have to wonder if something happened. I mean, there was a falling out, if there was an argument. I mean, Halak, according to Rick DiPietro a few months ago, told the Islanders over the summer that he didn't want to play 60 games again. And then this year, it felt like he was losing control of the starting job, so that upset him. I mean, at the same time, Staple alluded to his work ethic, and you have to also acknowledge the fact that it feels like every single time this team has a week break, Halak comes back injured. So, I mean, something must have gone wrong for that to even be a discussion because I'm probably I don't hate Halak, but I don't think he's anything great. And even now, I have to admit, like, this team needs Yarrow Halak if they want to contend next year. And the fact that the Islanders don't have Halak going into the playoffs makes me a lot less confident, of course.
Well, if something may have happened with them, and that's fine. Like if they want to trade Halak because there's a falling out between him and the organization, like that's understandable. But they have to bring somebody in, and the problem with the starting goaltending carousel, again, as we have plenty of experience with, is that it's like not overly easy to get a goalie as good as Halak. Not nearly as easy as people assume it is. So I'm fine with trading Halak if there's a problem there. I'm just simply not fine with not having a starting goalie on the team and basically crossing your fingers and hoping it works out.
Yeah, no, I think that's I agree with that. I don't think this team next year can go in without Halak or at least some other proven veteran. I don't think you can go in with just Grice and Berube or Christopher Gibson. It's it's again, I think as Pete said before, Grice is showing now why he's been a career backup, and that's not a knock on him. That's just what he is. He's never been asked to carry the number one workload for an extended period of time, whether he's wearing down a little bit or he's just maybe now there's more videotape out against him and teams know where to aim for when they shoot and his flaws and tendencies. It's becoming an issue, and if he continues to let up one bad goal a game, it's clearly going to cost him in the playoffs against whether it's the Penguins, the Capitals, the Panthers, the Rangers, or anyone else they may play along the way. It's they are going into the playoffs. They will have the worst goaltending in the East, or at least maybe the most unproven goaltending in the East. Doesn't mean that they can't, he can't get hot and win a couple games and win a couple of rounds. But going into the playoffs, they will likely have the worst goaltending situation in the East, depending on what happens with Fleury out in Pittsburgh. It's a scary proposition, but that's where we are right now. I know somebody, I think on Twitter, had asked, how confident are you in Grice going forward? And my response is, it doesn't really matter how confident I am because this is what we have. We don't have any other options. We're not going to turn to JF Berube or Christopher Gibson or anyone else to play in the playoffs. It's Thomas Grice's show. So my confidence in him, it doesn't matter. He's got to get the job done. It's fair or not, this is the position we're in, and we got to deal with it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, there's one proven goaltender on the roster right now in terms of like NHL caliber, and it's Thomas Grice. So we really just have to hope for the best and hope that he doesn't play like a backup because I mean it's happened where backup goaltenders have carried their teams through to a certain extent, but it's rare. You can't count on it. I can think obviously people talk about the Michael Leighton with Philadelphia a couple years ago, but I mean, that was such an anomaly, and I think we all agree, like, the Islander skaters aren't as good as that Philadelphia team was. So, I don't think the Islander skaters are going to, even if Fleury's out and they face Matt Murray, I think we can all agree Pittsburgh skaters are better than the Islander skaters. So, it's just accentuating a disadvantage. I think to your point, Mike, like, if you take the skaters and their performance this year outside of a handful of players and then throw the goaltending on top of it, it's not a very pretty picture, and that's my number one concern is that what we had, which was an advantage there, especially because of potential wonky scheduling, just becomes a total magnified disadvantage at this point. It's a little disconcerting, I would say, at this point.
Goaltending is definitely a concern, but it's not even close to my biggest concern. My biggest concern is the fact that our second pairing is currently injured. Travis Hamonic is a huge question mark for the playoffs for the second straight year. Calvin DeHaan went down. It seems like he isn't seriously injured, but he's still not totally fit to play. He'll probably miss the rest of the season, I'd guess, if I had to guess. Maybe get in a game. Hopefully be ready for the playoffs. But from the sound of Hamnick's injury, it doesn't sound like they're expecting him ready for the playoffs. He said it's a serious injury and they'll reevaluate it after the season. But that's my biggest concern, and the fact that right now I think the defense we iced yesterday was Letty Boychuk, Hickey Straight, who also got hurt, hold the applause, and then Pulak and Scott Mayfield, with Zhidlicki also banged up and having missed like 14 of the last 15 or something like that. We saw it last year, guys. I mean, you can't really compete in the playoffs with this kind of defense.
Yeah,
And
no,
we talked
it's
about it at the deadline. We said we needed to bring in a depth defenseman because our defense is injury prone, and here we are.
right. No, it's exactly what kind of our fears were a month or so ago. Was we thought we needed some more depth that we can play in a pinch, and obviously Garth Snow didn't think the same way, and here we are where we're really dipping deep down into the farm system to try to bring guys up. It does. I think before the game yesterday, Stable or one of the beat writers said that Dahan skated during warm-ups. Obviously, he didn't play, but if he's skating during warm-ups, that at least is somewhat encouraging. That if it was a playoff game, I think he probably would have gave it a go. So I agree with you, Pete, in the sense that he probably won't play again in the regular season, or if he does, it may just be maybe the last game of the year just to kind of make sure he's not too rusty. But I think Dahan will be ready for the start of the playoffs. I don't think we'll see Hamonic again in an Islander uniform. I think he's done, at least for the first round, if not more. But I have a sneaky suspicion that we've seen the last of Travis Hamonic here with the Islanders. And listen, let's hope everyone else stays healthy now. Because at least if Dahan comes back, and while, yes, it sucks to lose Hamonic, Pulak has, I think, stepped up pretty nicely over the last couple of games that he's been in the lineup. He's definitely high risk, high reward in the sense that he has a lot of offensive ability. I think that's clear. Anyone who watches him play, some of his decision making in his own end is still a little questionable, but you can live with that because he has, I think, enough ability where he can kind of make up for those mistakes with his skating and things of that nature. So if the only guy they're missing come the 13th or the 14th when the playoffs begin is Travis Hamonic, that's decent shape. Not to say it's great. Obviously, you want Hamonic in there, but I don't realistically think he'll be back for any time soon.
I really hope what you just said about Hamonic isn't true. If it really was his last game, the fact that he missed the playoffs this year and last year, after all he's been through with this organization, dude, my heart is ripped out for him if that's the case.
Hey, don't ask for a trade then. Stay with the team. You don't have to go away. He's not. The Islanders, from my understanding, the Islanders aren't forcing him out. He requested the trade. So while I hate to see him go out like this, life moves on. They'll replace him, and we go from there.
Still pretty awful luck.
No, it's bad luck. It's bad luck for the team. Clearly, they have a top 4 defenseman that they essentially are forced to give away because whatever personal issues are going on, and I'm not making light of them at all. That's his decision. But to Pete's point of it's ripping his heart out, I understand it sucks for the Islanders and it sucks for the team we root for because they're clearly weakened with him out of the lineup. But it's his decision if it's his last game to go out like this, not anyone else's.
And honestly, if he's the only guy missing, then I think they're not in terrible shape. I mean, believe me, it's a huge loss, but they were fine last year without Hamonic the first, 3.5 games until the Capitals just decided to run every single defenseman on the team, taking out 2 guys. So if he's the only guy missing, I don't think it's a death blow, but to your point, Mike, if it's more than that, if it's Hamonic and Dahan, and, Zidlicki's hurt, and even Straight's hurt, not that I'd be thrilled about Brian Strait in the lineup, but he's been pretty good as of late. That becomes a much more difficult situation. And to be honest, I was pretty against them not bringing a defenseman, but if you're missing all those guys, bringing in whoever like a Patrick Weirkoch is frankly not going to move the needle enough to really, to really make up for that. So again, if we're talking about missing like 3 or 4 defensemen, like I just don't know like how any team could overcome something like that realistically, especially if 2 of them are in the top 4. So we just have to hope because I think it's a very very fair concern, and the defense and goaltending in a lot of ways go hand in hand, and missing your starting goaltending, missing 1 or 2 top 4 defensemen, that adds up on you pretty quickly, especially when you're talking about defensemen that are really really good in transition and really good at stopping top lines. Like those are huge losses, and again, you're just not going to win many games if your backup is in a 7-game series. If your backup is facing Sidney Crosby 7 times, and you have like 1 legitimate or 2 legitimate top 4 defensemen at this point, it's a very very difficult road.
So, you guys are rooting for the Rangers tomorrow?
No.
No, I'm not rooting for the Rangers.
I have evidence that you are rooting for the Rangers.
I am rooting against the Islanders. Those are 2 different things.
I'm not rooting for. I'm gonna watch the game. Root that no Islander gets hurt. Whatever happens, happens.
Yes, root for health. That is exactly what I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for health, and frankly, I do hope the team plays well. I don't want to see them lay an egg, because ultimately, like, we have no control over the result of the game, obviously, but it would, despite all that, like, I would be much happier and encouraged to see the team play a 3rd straight game against a playoff team well, even if they don't get the win, than if they go out and lay an egg tomorrow because they just want Florida that badly. I do think that playing well is important, but at the end of the day, yeah, I think long term it's better for them to lose tomorrow.
I really don't know what I'm going to do. I think I might just take the over and root for goals.
There you go. That's probably the safest bet to go, the safest route to take.
Because, obviously there's the pros of beating the Rangers because you beat the Rangers, and there's the cons of beating the Rangers as we outlined. So it's probably not going to be one of those Islander-Ranger games where your emotions at an all-time high and you're texting all your friends, rubbing it in their faces, which kind of sucks because when you saw at the start of the year, April 7th, Islanders-Rangers, you were thinking this is going to be the real deal. And, it's the real deal. And that real deal is kind of hoping that your team loses. So in that way, it's disappointing. And, I know all my Ranger fan friends are kind of feeling the same way. But at the same time, the Ranger fan friends I talk to, they don't want to get swept by the Islanders. So, that's a thing at play here, the fact that we won all 3 games this year. And, no team wants to get swept by their biggest rivals. So, maybe the Rangers play a little harder.
It'll be interesting to see if Lundqvist plays tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure that he will.
Oh, he'll play either. I could see them going Ronta tomorrow, and then they'll go with Lundqvist on Saturday against the Red Wings because they don't want him to obviously not play for a week and a half of real action. So I could see them going that route. And I think tomorrow you won't see Girardi. I know he got hurt towards the end of the last game. Obviously, McDonough's out. So you'll see McElrath, you'll see Brady Shea, and whatever they do on forwards, whether they play Lindbergh or Hayes or Tanner Glass. I think generally you'll see their forward group because they don't have anyone else to play. But I think on defense, the only players you won't see are McDonough and Girardi. I think everyone else will kind of be the regular guys. And for the Islanders, I don't think we'll see DeHaan. I don't think we'll see Clutterbuck. I don't know what the extent of Straight's injury is. So I imagine if he's healthy, he'll play. But I do think there'll be a few guys. Prince might be back in the lineup. Who knows with Bernier, and they might keep Bolton in the lineup just as a throw him a bone because he's kind of been a good soldier this year and barely plays. So you might see a similar lineup against Washington. I don't think, again, ultimately I think though, no DeHaan, no Clutterbuck, and that'll be what they kind of roll with tomorrow or Thursday night, and again, we'll see where they end up.
Yeah, well, it's definitely going to be different. But that'll do it for us here tonight. Thanks for listening. And next time we talk, we'll be previewing our playoff series. So let's go Islanders, maybe, kind of. I don't know, not really. And we'll see you next time.